Hello there and welcome to the Secrets of Organ Playing podcast. I'm your host, Vidas Pinkevičius. Welcome to Secrets of Organ Playing podcast number 100. This is a small celebration for us. And 2 years ago, when I started doing this podcast, I never imagined I will do that many. So I want to say thank you, my sincere thank you to all my listeners and subscribers and supporters and guests also. Without their support, without their expertise and insights, this would not be possible to achieve. And I hope to continue to doing this because you guys write me all the time that this is valuable and helpful and inspiring in order to help you grow as an organist. So today's guest is a Dutch organist, Hugo Bakker. Born in 1985, Hugo studied history, organ, church music and harpsichord at Leiden University, the Rotterdam Conservatory and the Lemmens Institute in Leuven. His teachers for organ were Bernard Winsemius, Reitze, Smits and Ponet. Harpsichord and organ continuo he studied with Kris Verhelst. Hugo won prizes in Pistoia, in Italy, and many other places, and besides he was awarded the Svelling-Muller's Prize in 2014. Hugo is organist of St. Martinskerk in Saltenbommel, where he plays the monumental Wolferts Heinemann organ from 1783. And besides he performs as a soloist or as accompanist, and he teaches and writes musicological articles. In this conversation, Hugo and I talk about his organist career and about the importance of focusing on the music, trying as many different organs as possible, and always continue learning. Let's go to the show. So, I'm so delighted that we're finally having this conversation, although technology was kind of slow this morning for me. So thank you so much for waiting for me to connect several times and staying on the line. You are in the Netherlands and I'm in Lithuania. We are talking on the beautiful Thursday morning, but I know our listeners will hear this on Sunday morning on the 5th of June in about 10 days. And we'll be very, very much eager to know more about what it is you do, what is your organist journey, what have you experienced in your way, what challenges you met on your way to becoming a good organist, for example, and what advice can you give our listeners who are around the world also trying to perfect their organ skills. So thank you so much, Hugo, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Great. Hugo, can you share with us an experience from your early days, how you first fell in love with the organ? Do you remember the story?
Yes, I actually do not remember completely why I wanted to play organ. In Holland, this is a little bit different as opposed to some other countries where you most of the times learn first the piano and then the organ. In Holland, this is not really the case. Most people just start with organ playing. And so did I. I knew the organ, of course, from the church. But my parents didn't play any music or in the neighborhood. I didn't know many organ. So I really don't know why. But if the time was there to choose an instrument, I said, "Oh, okay, I want to play organ." And I just started, and then something. After a few years, I thought this is something which is really important to me.
Uh-huh. So, a few years from the beginning, you started realizing that organ is going to play a very significant part in your life, right?
Yes.
Was it a gradual recognition or like an overnight revelation for you?
Well, that's a good question. I think like many colleagues in the first time when you think, okay, this is important for me, because of the social environment, you think it's not really possible to pursue a professional career, because this is something out of the question, because you cannot have a normal career like other people. So you think, well, this is a nice hobby or something, and then there is a moment that you think, I cannot do anything else, I just have to. And that sense is, of course, a kind of revelation. But for me personally, this was really related to music and not so much as to the organ as an instrument, although, well, it was my only means to make music, so the organ had to be it.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And of course, when organ cracks, it never let me go. For many people, it's sort of love at first sight. When they discover the intricacy of the mechanics of the organ or the mystery of the instrument. By the way, what was it so fascinating in the organ for you? What captivated right away your attention?
Yeah, of course, the organ has a very big sound, and of course, like a child, you're impressed by it and all the colors, and you think of it as a keyboard with all kinds of sounds, and you're intrigued by it. Well, this of course stays the same, that you have some kind of fascination for all these sounds, and especially when you encounter beautiful organs. But like many people in Holland, there is the first surroundings of the organ. Well, that was played very badly, and so you never think of it as something really musical, and that only grows when you encounter some other music, and then you think, oh, the organ is also capable of making music, and that takes some time.
Exactly. At first, our experience will be quite modest, right? Because we don't have the ability to play great music right away without mistakes, to play hymns and improvise like great virtuosos. But we're starting slow and simple, one step at a time. But if you practice relentlessly, day in, day out, and every week you start to improve a little bit. Maybe you don't notice that, or maybe you start noticing maybe after 6 months. Do you remember, Hugo, when was the first time you discovered that you are getting better at the organ?
Well, I was not talented at all, so it took me always a lot of time to get better, especially in the beginning. Also because, maybe more people, I went to a very nice woman, a teacher, but she was not a professional organist, and it was something like many people did, going to someone who was not professional, and so, well, of course, the advantages were not so fast in the beginning, and then I went to study something different. In the first, I started to study sciences, but I quit that. But then I took lessons with a professional organist, a very well-known organist, a very, very good player. And that was kind of a revelation. Then I was advancing quicker, and then I tried, maybe I can go to the conservatory after all, but I was not really, I thought, I cannot do this. This will never be possible. But then I tried, and then I started, and then everything went okay, so I stayed.
I see. So, Hugo, who was your first mentor? Can you share the name? Maybe he's still alive or she is still alive and would like to be appreciated online, and maybe.
Yes, when I started at the conservatory, my teacher was Bernard Winsemius. He's a very famous organist in Holland. He's a specialist in 17th century music. And he's a great musician. I maybe had some difficulties also with learning with him because I had to, of course, to learn all the techniques, etc. And he is very towards the music, so that was in the beginning quite difficult. But he is an amazing musician.
What did you learn from him at first? Of course, you had to learn from fundamentals of organ playing, right? Did you learn something else, like improvisation maybe, or music theory and harmony skills with him too, that stuck with you for a long time?
Well, unfortunately, when I started to study at the conservatory where I studied, there were not many side subjects. So also, like improvisation was not something which was taught very often. Fortunately, this changed when I went away there, and I studied also in another conservatory in Leuven in Belgium, and there things are quite different. So there is a lot of theory. Like Belgium is more like a face towards France with a lot of theory, a lot of harmony, counterpoint, etc. But in Holland, this was really not so developed. But I think it changes now. So this is a good case, but. When I started studying, I was really focused on the main subject, just organ. So that's a pity. So I'm very happy that I also studied in Leuven, and I also studied Harpsichord to do other things like basso, continuo, etc.
It's really great to study in several places, right? Because you get perspective from different people, right? Maybe your first teacher is a great musician, right? And you always will remember this. But when you get an experience with another professor from another area, maybe even from another country, then really what happens, your musical horizons and your personality can develop to a much greater extent, right? You sort of absorb many different cultures and become a part of what you have experienced, right? Your life gets bigger, your character gets more developed, and your musicianship too. Don't you agree?
Yes, I agree very much. I would really advise everyone to not stick to one teacher. Whatever, I mean, it may be a great teacher, may be a fantastic musician, but still then it would be a good advice to change teachers after your bachelor's or something. But
it's like really studying just one style of music. Let's say you're in love with the French Baroque, French classical, or North German, or the Dutch great master Swelling, right? And you only play Swelling every day, every week, right? And it's great, right? Nobody can really say that Swelling will be bad for your health because he developed so many great North German organists, right? And Dutch organists too, and even Swedish organists. Basically, entire organ culture from Northern Europe is responsible in part for Swelling's mastery. But today, in our day and age, we can learn from so many different areas and people, not only even from organs, but we can look across the board, across the cultural environment and experiences, right? Every day we can be inspired.
Yes, I think so, and I think it's also opposed to some. I think it's a good idea to discover some music and really get into it. But to be a specialist, I think it's a good thing to be a specialist on something. But if you also play some other music, this can also be very helpful for other music. Like if you're well, let's say if you want to play Swelling, it's fantastic, but it can be helpful to have studied also some really difficult pieces by Messiaen to just only also really, I mean, you use other fingerings, of course, but I think it's helpful to play a big range of repertory and also a big range of organs, because we can specialize on Swelling. It's very nice, but the situation is not like that we can play only on organs like Zwelinga. It's utopia. So you have to be able to play on all kind of organs. So you better take care you can.
Unless you are at AutoCAD, right?
Well, still, then we don't have the organ of Zwelinga. I mean, they have the big Vater Müller organ is very difficult to play in AutoCAD. So I only know it before the restoration, but so still, then you have to be capable of playing really different kind of instrument.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Hugo, what was your first organ piece that you learned at the beginning? Do you remember?
Well, it's a good question. I think really of literature. I think it's the C major Bach, the 5/4. What is it? Frida with the pedal, the big chords in the beginning, the high C, and then the panel T ta T T. So the short prelude and a few, which is a little bit somewhat like the what tempo?
5 maybe, or something like that. It's not very long.
No, it's quite short. You can.
So for this to happen, you have to have a good piano technique too. Right.
Well, that's something. I didn't learn. I didn't learn any piano before starting the organ. This is more or less like everyone does it in Holland. It's really different from the French tradition where you learn piano first. Well, it might be something which is a pity in some way, because learning the piano, of course, teaches you very much about touché, etc. But well, this is the way it goes, and it's okay. I mean,
yes, I think nowadays you can develop your finger technique not only on the piano but also on the harpsichord, clavichord, on
of course. Yes.
And that's how back in the day, in the Baroque times, organists practiced.
Yes.
Traditionally.
Yeah. Of course, we are curious to know about what this means, about touché, etc. Because I think the people sometimes think it's good to practice on harpsichord, but the touché is of course very different. So on harpsichord you have to release the key quite fast, and if you do this in organ, this is not so beautiful. So you really have to think in different approaches, I think. And also, if you, for example, learn a frescobalg toccata, my experience is that your interpretation is really influenced by the instrument you play on. So if you start this on harpsichord, I really have a different interpretation than on organ. This is of course quite logical, but it's not as easy. So like go practicing on the harpsichord, that's good, and then you can play on the organ. So maybe, and back in the days, well, maybe this also says something about certain that it is in some way a little bit relative. The idea of performance.
When you think about your early days of organ playing, and now that you are developed organist, right, you can play basically anything you like, right, with ease probably. What is different now and then? What was the most challenging thing for you at the beginning?
Wow, that's a good question. I think one of the challenges was that of course, as we are an organist, we can only make a lot of expression. Well, not only, but our main thing of making expression is using the rhythm. I mean, our adjuncts and of course articulation. But for me, it was a challenge like that. This desire to be expressive then the rhythm is a problem. That was one thing I really had to learn, that you can make, of course, crescendo, diminuendo on piano or whatever instruments, but you need to use other means on the organ, but that doesn't mean you can affect the rhythm that much.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And how about now? What is challenging to you right now?
What is challenging to do right now? Well, of course, every piece brings its own challenges. Every record has its own challenges. This is I think always a very big challenge of playing the organ is all these different instruments, always getting accustomed, always it take a lot of energy always to go to the maximum of getting the best registrations. This is really something that it will never go easily. You always have to work because of this.
I see. So, what are you spending your most time on now, Hugo? What is you do right now currently as an organist?
Well, currently I just made a recording. It's actually my debut today. It's also with 21st century repertory. So the most of the time I spend with contemporary repertoire right now. Also because I'm together with a colleague. I'm working on a book on a famous Dutch composer, Jan Lemmens, who's still alive, and made some really beautiful pieces. So that are the things I'm working on right now, and then, but of course, because all these different organs, in effect, I cannot play always contemporary music, of course. So I also spend a lot of time playing, practicing all early music for concerts or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Do you have enough time to practice with all your activities right now, or do you have to spend your time wisely dividing between, other things that you have to do during your day?
But this is, of course, always a problem. In Holland, we don't have like in Germany that you can have a full-time job in church or something, or a full-time job teaching. So you really have to divide with a job in church, a job with teaching, some concerts, chamber music as a harpsichord player. All these things you have to try to carefully divide. And of course, it's always just fight for practice time, like we all have. Also because of the churches. I work in a very beautiful church with a very beautiful instrument, but this means also that the church is so is rented out sometimes, so it's always difficult to get there. I don't know whether this problem also is in the Baltic states, but in Holland this is a very acute problem that churches. Of course, there is a lot less of church attendance, but that also means that there is less income from churches, and they really have to make other ways of money by doing other things in churches, which of course is a problem for the organist to practice and to teach there. But I think, yeah.
So the attendance of church services in the Netherlands is not great, right? We have empty spaces, and I've been to Netherlands a few times, and I've seen that churches rent out the building, right, for some other cultural and not only cultural activities, maybe sometimes fashion shows and even cafes, right, in the buildings. And you have an interesting phenomena where you have this antique 17th century organ back in the gallery, and maybe in the choir loft too, a little bit smaller instrument, and you have sometimes cafe on the side, right, where people can buy some some drinks, right, and get some coffee or something like that. Because of course people don't go to churches anymore too often in our countries, especially in Europe, and churches have to really figure out the way to support themselves, right?
Yes, and I think this is just a fact. We cannot, like a lot of organists go into the. They want to defend, like to say, well, I want to defend the organ, and before you know, you have a fight with something like some powers who want to rent out the church and the organist at the other end. I think we should not do that. We really should choose now for preservation of the organs, which means that we also have to think with the churches how the churches can survive. I mean, if they won't survive also with maybe with renting out or something, then the organ won't either. So if you cannot be them, just join them. And I think we really should do this now, because the organ is in danger more than any other time, or maybe it's somewhat comparable as in the French Revolution or something. But this is a very important time for a lot of historical instruments. So that means also that all organists who are involved now have, of course, a great responsibility to seek what is best for this instrument. And I think that also means that you have to involve in this process of what do we do with all these old buildings? Because if you retreat, then of course this means not any good for this instrument.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think technology today provides a lot of new opportunities, right? Even though attendance is diminishing in general, physical attendance. But imagine a situation where an organist from the organ balcony in half-empty space can broadcast live their recitals, right, across the globe, and thousands of people can join in live, and even support financially because of that. Organists can find subscribers, who can do recurring payments in order to support these instruments or this organist, or this organization, whatever that might be, right? Maybe 10 years ago it wasn't possible, right? But now it's common practice. So it's really, really easy now to get attention.
You have to use every means to get something done. So I completely agree. But for me personally, nothing can, of course, this experience of these great acoustics, which are so much part of the organ experience. You ask, why are you fascinated by the organ? Something is also that this magical play with the acoustics is so important part of the organ more than a lot of other instruments. So for me, the experience of being in the church and to is for me very important. So that cannot be replaced by modern technique. But I agree that you have to use it. I mean, was it only to seduce some people to also get into this church one day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If we think about the instrument as only the physical device, right, like a mechanical wonder, right, that's one thing. But if we think about the organ as a message, or a vehicle for a message, something like an organist transmits their message through the organ, right, then this not can mean physical attendance, but can be quite digital across the globe, because it's basically an idea we are as organists transmitting to the world, and that can take many shapes.
Yes, exactly. So it can take the shape of the experience in the church and also outside. You can, of course, separate it also. Of course, what is important to you? The instrument is important to me, but also the music, and or for me personally, the music is on the first place, and for other people, maybe the instrument is on the first place. These are different approaches, which are different, maybe served by also different things. I mean, for me personally, the instrument cannot be experienced so well without the physical attendance in the church, but the music can sometimes. I mean, we don't live in utopia, so you have to use everything. Also, if it maybe is not. I mean, we cannot play early music in a way which is 100% convincingly, because nowadays the situation is changed so much. So we have to accept that we have to make compromises, and that means also, like in using other techniques, or we just have to embrace these things and be prepared to compromise, so that we can make our message more clear and convince people with this message.
Completely agree, Hugo. If technology is so free for everybody, right? Of course, everybody is going to use it. So to get attention is going to get even more difficult, because in a few years maybe every organist in the world will be using technology like this to connect with people, to understand. So what we do then is very important. Probably, if we transmit from our hearts, if we transmit our true message, basically, if we are trying to be ourselves, not to copy somebody else, what any great master is doing online or offline, but basically trying to spread our truth, then I think it gets easier regardless of the competition, regardless of how many other people are doing similar things, right?
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Right. So basically be yourself as an organist. Don't try to copy anybody else. If you want to be a specialist playing Messiaen, that's fine. If you want to specialize in Svelling, that's even better. If you want to combine Messiaen with Svelling, nobody has done that, right? You could create chromatic fantasy based on octatonic scale that Messiaen used. Nobody has done that. And you would be the number one in the world at this combination, right? You would be very...
I think you touched an important point, and that is this technology of broadcasting yourself, and like everybody has some movies on YouTube, etc., is also meaning some of the times that of course we all listen also to it. That also means that, or let's say it like this, there is a big danger that everyone plays in the end the same, because we listen to each other and we take the good things out, we leave the bad things out. That means that more than in earlier days, maybe there is a kind of playing which is the most prominent. And I think you can hear this on competitions and in a lot of concerts. People, whether you're from France, Italy, or Holland, we all play the same, more or less. So it's more difficult. This technology makes it for us more difficult to find their voice at other hand, which is ourselves. But maybe this is not the most important thing, because we are not after ourselves, but we are after the music, of course. What does the music say? So I really think that the only way out is to play new music and to have new music composed also, because in the end we well, there is so much. I mean, if you because also of this new technology, if I look a not so well-known piece by Sveiling, there are already 20 recordings on the internet. And then you can, of course, try to be very extrovert and do something strange, but that is not, then you're not after the music anymore. So better than, again, playing this piece, maybe you can have to play another piece, and that means that we need new music every day.
Exactly. Do you like new music? Do you like to play new music regularly?
Well, yes, I like it, and I try to have new music in every concert, and especially I am always looking for new music for also for historical instruments. A lot of contemporary music is not playable on the instruments in Holland. I mean, the instruments in Holland are not made for literature, but are made for congregational singing. So that means that you have to make a lot of compromises, and especially in contemporary music, this can be a big problem. But happily now composers embrace more of the history of the organ, and also composes pieces for historical types of instruments. I think that's a great thing. On the other hand, not everything which is written is of course, this is logical, but I don't like a lot of new music because of how it is written, like all these neo styles. I'm not very fond of it.
Mm-hmm. And how about Hugo? Do you compose yourself?
That's a good question. I of course, I think every musician is actually would like to have been a composer, but at the end, it always. Well, for me, I don't compose something to play, but in concerts or something. But maybe in the future, it's something I want to leave open, but. For now, I only compose for myself.
Mm-hmm. And, I think you touched a good point that every musician really has this urge to create, right? But he has also inner fear of being not good enough, right? Being not original enough, right? Not relevant enough. And when you first start to create, nonetheless, of these fears, we discovered that our ideas actually are better than the execution, right? We always can pick up many, many beautiful melodies and harmonies and polyphony in our heads. But in writing, or even in improvisation, to create it right away, it's much more difficult than to think new ideas, right? So I think it depends on whether a person decides to stick with it for a while, to stick regardless of how good or bad it is at the beginning, right?
But you need a lot of courage to do that. I mean, like you said, we are used to live in this music of Messiaen, of Alain, of Ligeti or whatever, but I mean, this is of course such a fantastic music that and we practice it, so we live with it. So that is of course a big restraint to do something yourself.
You mentioned Messiaen, Alain, and Ligeti, right? Those great masters of the 20th century. Imagine one of them was very shy at the beginning and decided, "Oh, my music sucks. I better not." Maybe Messiaen was shy, right, at the beginning, and he said, "Oh, maybe Marcel Dupré is better than me, right? And maybe I will stop composing because I'm not good enough. I can create those beautiful, harmonies, but I will not be able to write as beautiful as bird songs, as bird can sing naturally, right? I can imitate, but I will not be like a real natural bird." So Messiaen he might have been really very shy. I hope he was not, but maybe.
We know he was not. So, I mean, I think it's unbelievable, of course, how he can. He was so young and already such a language which is so much there. Well, this is, of course, so unbelievable that it must have convinced himself also.
Exactly. But he was better at the end than at the beginning, definitely, right? He made a progress, right? And if he didn't believe that he will make a progress, he probably would have stopped, right? Because it would have been pointless to do the same thing over and over without any
Yes, but of course, this is, I think, this has also meant for Messiaen some crisis. I mean, he did, of course, wonderful things, and maybe after I'm not a specialist, but after the Messe Pantecotte or something. I mean, if you look to the meditations, I think you can feel this crisis, like what I have to do now. Then he even some things with the alphabet. For me personally, somewhat less convincing. So he had this wonderful harmonies, and then the wonderful bird songs, and then the serial writing. And what was next? Probably this was also a very difficult point for him. And then it took him a lot of time to write some other organ music. And then you have these meditations, of course, and the Leuven, which are some way a catalog of what he already did. So, I mean, also for the big composers, this is, of course, always a problem to be original, also to yourself.
Exactly. Even if we are no great composers, but if you just create something, right, and we discover that, oh, this piece or this style would work, right, and we write for months and even years and even decades in this style, and little by little we get tired of this style and decide, oh, we need something else, something new. But something new doesn't come so easily, right? And people might get discouraged and stop creating at all and wait for, inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
But what great creators do, they create constantly without inspiration, and inspiration will come later, probably.
Exactly. But that take a lot of courage, a lot of time, and also some luck and support. I mean, everything has to be at the right place at the right moment to be able to do that. But like I said, Messiaen did. So it's possible. But of course, this is not only a problem of individual composers. I mean, this really a problem of style is much more a problem now than in Baroque time or in Romantic times. I mean, of course, these composers always thought about style, but now also our style is so much. It's related, of course, to the question: what can we do without tonality? What will we do next? This is not only a question of individual composers, but for every composer.
Wonderful. So, Hugo, we have talked a lot about those internal struggles that organists and composers face every day, probably. When you think about it, what would be 3 steps in your mind in order to become a great organist?
Yes, the first step is, I think, that you don't think anymore in being the best or something. That kind of competition you leave away, and that you will only have a quest for the notes. So that you focus on the notes, and of course you have to play them. So you have to also think about how you play them, and I think you have to do some research also to information related to performance practice, of course, and to go as far as you go. But to think I want to be better or something is something that is a little bit of vanity. You should, if you focus on the notes, it's also kind of relief, because what other people think will become less important. But of course, it is a struggle.
Wonderful. So the first step is probably not to strive to be the best, right? Not to try to be the best.
No, to focus just on notes and less as yourself as a performer.
The second step.
Well, the second step is, of course, how do I translate this? So you have to gain in technique, of course. My advice is also don't stick to. I think it's very helpful to do as many different things as possible and to play on as many different organs as possible. Try to be versatile and not. It can be very. Don't narrow yourself down too much.
Mm-hmm.
And number 3. Well, always stay learning. I mean, I also nowadays still play for people and ask their opinion. Never be afraid of ask other people what they think, because it's always helpful. And it's something of vanity that we stop learning. I mean, in vocal world, it's very common to have coaches all the time. You are performing, also the very great singers. But in organ playing, we go to conservatory and then we stop. And this is really, the organ repertory is too rich and all these different instruments. It's such a great richness and just, we cannot learn this in 10 years or 15 years. We just go on. And
wonderful, Hugo. It's your advice is so complex, but also very, very simple, right? The first step is basically focus on the notes. The second is try out as many different organs as you can. And the third probably is always be learning, right?
Exactly.
That's what it takes, right? Thank you so much, Hugo. I really feel that this conversation will inspire a lot of people to get better at what they do, at playing the organ, at creating and sharing, at expanding their technological skills, maybe taking advantage of new technology that gives new possibilities today. So now, could you share with our listeners a link where they could find more about you and your work online?
I have a website. It's quite modest, I have to confess. I have to work at it. It is www.hugobakker.org. So easy to remember. But I will update it soon, and then you can also find information about the new CD, which will arrive at the 8th of July. And you can also find a link to my little music publishing house. I also publish some music also by other people. Mm-hmm. But you can find it on the website.
Wonderful. I'll spell it out. HUGOBAKKER.org, right?
Yes, that's exactly.
That's your website. Wonderful. I hope people will visit and get to know more about you and your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you will have a great, tremendous creativity this year and the next year also. Let's keep in touch, and I hope to inspire a lot of people around the world.
Thank you very, very much, and have a nice day.
If you liked this conversation, I encourage you to visit my blog, Secrets of Organ Playing, at organduo.lt, where you will find lots of insights, practical advice, and training for every area of organ playing. You can subscribe to this blog for free to get your daily dose of inspiration and to be the first to know when any of my future podcasts roll out. I hope to help you reach your dreams in organ playing. I'm Vidas Plinkevicius. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you online really soon.